Welcome to Fun and Fundraising, everybody. The podcast where we talk with people behind top nonprofit galas and signature fundraising events to showcase how they positively transform their communities. I'm your host, Rob Giardinelli, and today I have two really great guests on. We have Jacqui Schraad, who is the executive director of the Texas State History Museum Foundation. And we have Krystle Alvarado, who for many years has produced the event. And the Texas Independence Day dinner, one, it celebrates the anniversary of Texas's independence every year, but it is one of the very best produced events in Texas. And they do it with a guest list of people all throughout the state. So it makes it a really unique and really elevated and really fun event. And I especially, want to talk with Jacqui and Krystle about their partnership and why having an event producer is absolutely critical to an event success. Even if you have in-house event people, your event producer is the COO and can really help you all as an organization focus on the guest so that the event producer can take care of the things that inevitably come up during any event. So with that, Jacqui, Krystle, welcome. And I'm so thrilled to have you both
Thank,
here today.
thank you, Rob.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. So Jacqui, tell us the mission of the Texas State History Museum Foundation.
The foundation raises funds and awareness for the Bullock Texas State History Museum. The museum is steps away from the state capitol on the beautiful new Texas Capitol Mall here in Austin, and it shares the story of Texas with over 400,000 visitors every year. The museum's mission is to create experiences that educate, engage, and encourage a deeper understanding of Texas.
Fantastic. And, I'm glad you brought up the museum and the foundation. So the relationship is one of the more unique ones in terms of a fundraiser as to how you all work together. So talk with us a little bit more about the partnership between the Texas State History Museum Foundation and the Bullock Museum and how the two work together.
Sure. The museum is the official state museum of Texas. It's owned and operated by the state, which appropriated the funding for the museum's construction. The museum opened its doors on San Jacinto Day in 2001. And as the legislature appropriated the money, our foundation was incorporated as a nonprofit to raise private funds for some of the flourishes in the museum that the legislature felt it wasn't appropriate for taxpayers to pay for, like the beautiful mosaic tile floor in the lobby and the giant bronze star out on the plaza, which if you pay close attention, you'll see in a lot of car commercials. They like to drive by that giant star. Once the museum opened up, our foundation pivoted and started raising major gifts for the museum's programs. And in 2005, we produced the first Texas Independence Day dinner. We're very proud that since inception, we've raised over $36 million in support of the museum, plus provided over $1.4 million from an endowment.
Wow, that's, tens of millions of dollars. And it you see it when you come in because it really is a world-class museum with really, really great exhibits and a fantastic IMAX theater. I got to
Yes.
see F1 at that. It was really cool to kind of be immersed in that space. And,
Yeah.
I'm glad you had, I want to talk about the board largely
Mhm.
because a lot of organizations are local and anyone who has ties to Texas or is Texan knows Texas is local to a Texan. So, but at the same time, it's a geographically very, very large state. So, what advice would you give to someone looking to have a board with people from multiple cities to create, something cohesive that allows you to execute the vision of what you want to set out to do?
Well, I think first is recruitment from people from out the state. And I wish I had a secret formula, but I don't. It is just really purposeful, focused effort to recruit people from throughout the state. And our board nominating committee every year identifies a region of the state that we'd like more board members and representation from. And then it is a focused effort every year to recruit people from that area. This is my first experience doing a statewide board. And so I've learned as I've gone along. I think in recruitment from throughout the state, something that really helps us is to make sure trust that prospects can see a connection between the city that they're from or their area that they're from and the Bullock's work. And so something that's kind of fun to do is when I'm talking with a prospective board member to see if they're interested and why they might want to become engaged, is we'll do a little research and we'll identify maybe artifacts that have been in the museum or currently on exhibit from their city, or maybe programs that have happened. And when we share that with them, they're so impressed with that pride of place that they have a place at the Bullock Museum. And then they can see why it makes sense for them to get involved in a museum in Austin, because it is statewide and it's about the entire state. I think something else I've learned in running a statewide board and getting people engaged is providing social opportunities, because our trustees meet 3 times a year in Austin. So what we do is the night before the first board meeting is we have a trustee dinner, and it is purely social. There is no business going on. There's no agenda, no speakers. It's about them getting to know each other better outside of the boardroom. And even at the board meetings, we provide time before and after the meeting and during a lunch, which sometimes becomes more extended than we intended the lunch break, for the trustees to chat with each other. And I do hear from quite a few trustees that one of their favorite things about being involved in this statewide board is getting to know people from across the state.
I'm really glad that you talked about that, and especially the part about socializing and how,
Mhm.
especially if people are in a community board, people can just go and gather for coffee.
Right.
And when it's statewide, that's not something that's really doable. So to create opportunities for them to engage socially, not talk about the board, not talk about
Mhm.
business, but talk about the things that are going on in their own individual cities. And the next time you come to this city, go see this or do that, or whatever it is that they're going to talk about is so important. I'm really glad that you talked about that, because I think that's a thing a lot of community boards even miss the mark on, is they just figure, oh, we're all in the same city, so they'll just go grab coffee if they want to. But to create
Yep.
those opportunities on site, in person, for board meetings multiple times a year, as you all do, I think is just really, really fantastic.
That esprit de corps is just essential, and having trust, and friendships with the other board members for sure.
Absolutely. And, ironically, gathering for coffee, and we're both based in Austin, is how we came up with the idea for this segment. And you and I gathered for coffee a few months ago, and I was like, tell me how Krystle got involved with the dinner. So Krystle, tell us initially the story about how you got involved with producing the Texas Independence Day dinner and why you've continued to do it, for so many years.
Absolutely. So I first came on board over 10 years ago with the foundation, but it was to help close out a capital campaign that we were doing at the time, Texas on the Horizon, which helped completely renovate the first floor. It's beautiful. I know you've been there many times to house the LaBelle. And through that process, Jacqui and I realized we worked really well together. And they had some staffing changes that came about. And I had a background in fundraising and event planning. So I had been coming to a few of the galas, and she said, would you like to help in this role? And I said, absolutely. I really feel that I'm very detail oriented. I've produced many statewide and national events. So, and I loved coming to the event. I got to come the first time as a guest, and I was just really blown away with the gala. So I said, absolutely. And now this will be my ninth gala to produce with the foundation. And I love doing it. I think every year, seeing how my calendar rolls out and how we start our early conceptual conversations and talking about honorees in the summer to, bringing on who the honorees are going to be, and then the gala chair, all the way until sitting there on the terrazzo floor, watching the last chairs roll out at the end of the evening, and really seeing how this whole year-long process took shape, and how proud we are of what we put on every year.
Oh, that's fantastic. And, I especially love that you were a guest before you started planning it. So talk a little bit about how being a guest at this event, because not necessarily every event producer gets to do that. How did
Right.
that kind of affect you being a guest, how you produce this event in particular?
So I think it's so important to have people involved that have a tie to the organization. And something that binds every Texan, is their Texas pride and being excited to be a Texan. So unlike other organizations where many people might not know what they're there, what the fundraising's for, everyone. It's very easy to sell Texas to Texans. So that makes it a very special evening. So just arriving and seeing that it's a traditional black tie event, which I feel so many are getting away from, to be rubbing shoulders with people who I recognize their names of people who have their own collections and they're dedicated to preserving Texas history. And just seeing all the generations of people that really come together for our shared Texas heritage was exciting to me as a guest before I was ever involved in it. And as a fundraiser, you always ask yourself, like, how hard is it to pitch this organization, or how many points of contact do you need before they understand the mission and what you're raising for? And with the Texas History Museum, it's very easy because everyone understands our shared heritage and wanting to preserve that.
Absolutely. And, I've never heard it explained that way before, but the through line is Texans have Texas pride. And
Yes.
like you said, that is a really easy thing to sell. And I never thought about it that way, but it shows in the event because it feels like a Texas event when I walk into it. It does not feel like an Austin event. Talk about
Mhm.
how you are able to kind of create something to where whether you're from El Paso or Amarillo or Corpus or any one of the bigger markets in the middle of the state, how they all feel their corner of Texas is represented.
I think we do a good job of making sure we have honorees. If you come year over year, honorees from across the state. We have Panhandle stories and South Texas stories. It really runs the gamut. And we also go out of our way with our board members as well. I think what Jacqui talked about earlier, the time and energy they put into making sure we have a geographically diverse board is very important because those people come and they're sponsors and they bring their friends and family. So really we have touch points all throughout the state in the evening. And then we like to make sure that the program participants as well aren't just Austin-based individuals, but we have people who are on stage from El Paso and from Corpus Christi and from Dallas. So it really does feel like a statewide event when you're there because we go out of our way to make sure we're not just highlighting Central Texas.
Oh gosh, I have so many more questions, but I want to bring Jacqui back into the conversation here. And Krystle's doing a very effective job as to, how she really has helped elevate the event. But can you share from an organization perspective why it is an absolute must to hire an event producer for their gala or signature fundraising event?
Oh, absolutely. If you can get somebody as talented and skilled and effective as Krystle, it can just take your event to a whole new level and you can raise so much more money that you can cover those fees plus just net so much more proceeds in our case for the museum. It's just been a great investment. And I think in terms of soft costs, um, in the past, I took the approach before we had Krystle that I think a lot of nonprofits do is you think you're going to put a junior person on your staff in charge of the event because there's a timeline, there's a formula, and then the executive director serves, kind of oversees them, serves as a resource for questions. And that's what I'd been doing. Then, as Krystle said, one year she needed to step in and she took it to a level I never even thought of. And then what happens is because I can just turn it over to Krystle, she said, senior on this and trust her, that it clears my calendar and I can focus on so many other things for the museum throughout the year that it's just really elevated everything we can do throughout the year for the museum to have Krystle do it rather than me oversee a junior person. So it definitely pays off.
Absolutely. And you had mentioned in the green room when we were talking, it also, in addition to the gala, you all have a really busy couple of days going on around that gala because as we mentioned earlier, and as Krystle and Jacqui both mentioned, they do, three board meetings a year where everyone comes into Austin. So a board meeting is also around that. So it gives you the opportunity to kind of you have a lot on your plate. An event would
Mm-hmm.
just be too much. And that's, it's great leadership to realize that and to hand the keys to somebody and trust somebody is really vital. And that actually leads me to my next question. And that is, what is, and you two each had said in the beginning of this segment that you both vibe and work really well together. So what is the secret to creating a successful relationship between the organization and the event producer of a gala or signature fundraising event? And Jacqui, I'd like you to go first, and then Krystle, I'd love you to share your thoughts from the event producing perspective.
Well, I think from my side, I would think trust and complementary skills are particular for why it works so well between Krystle and I. I fully trust Krystle. She can take on the event. I know everything's going to be done to the absolute highest level. I don't need to be looking over her shoulder. She doesn't have to report in to me and the rest of the staff on what she's doing. And then I think we just have a unique relationship in our complementary skills, in that Krystle's not going to fight me to write the speaker's remarks on the program that evening. And I am happy to turn over to her working the phones to make the follow-up calls on the solicitations. And so we both have our strengths. And so I think that's what's really special about this relationship is Krystle really fills in the gaps on my weaknesses and things I don't really like doing. And so we kind of complement each other in that way.
I think it's also important to have someone, as we discussed before, bought in to the mission of the organization. I feel that there's a lot of organizations out there that will hire someone, but who doesn't fully understand the purpose of the organization and what they're trying to do. And because we always talk about it, even if we've hit our fundraising goal before, even if our honorees and everyone's on time, we want our guests to leave there being honored, proud of the evening, but also have a tie back to Texas history. So we try to have the theme threaded throughout the evening and the event. I also think, as Jacqui mentioned, having a junior person where someone like Jacqui would be involved. I've seen it go wrong when inevitably everyone knows that's been in event planning. It's not if things go wrong the night of the event, it's when. And if you have a junior person, and I'm just going to throw out some things that have happened, and you're under freeze watch and airplanes can't land at the airport for, a statewide event, or a gala guest shows up and brings 5 extra people and we have a seated event, or crazy cowboy fans are all on the plaza because they want to catch a glimpse of Roger Staubach and knowing how to deal with that, or a car service forgets to pick up your honoree and you realize it, 15 minutes before they're supposed to be there. These things happen over and over again in events. And if you have a junior person who isn't used to dealing with the day of chaos, it makes everyone stressed out. Small things start to fall through the cracks instead of having a professional that'll say, okay, this is what we're going to do. And Jacqui and I, when those situations have come up over the years, we're very calm. We have a plan of action. We decide who's going to do what, and we just roll with it. So it is important to have a professional involved in the production of the event.
I'm glad you mentioned, let's just say, the tales of what goes on during an event. One thing, though, that Krystle, that you mentioned, and this is what I have admired you both so much for over the years, is your program has never once ran long. I mean, it ends at 10. There may have been one year where maybe it ended at 10:01, but it ends at 10, if not 9:55. I'd love to hear from your two's perspective. How do you keep honorees on track to not ramble? Because that's something that a lot of events really struggle with, is the honoree, when they get on stage, it's completely out of your control. How do you find honorees that actually stick to the script so that the guests have the best experience possible?
Do you want to take
Well,
that, Jacqui, or do you want me to?
Krystle, you can start. I have some thoughts, but
I will say leaving room in your program and your line by line and making sure the other speakers of the evening, you're just really tight and let them know expectations moving forward. We have been very lucky with fantastic honorees. I mean, we're honoring them as history-making Texans because of, the national and international scope they've had in their field. So these are professionals as well. This isn't their first time up to a microphone, but going through the rest of the program, and Jacqui and I have many, many meetings, and with our president, who has a speaking role as well, and our gala chair, who has a speaking role. And we make sure it's really tight and that everyone understands what's expected of them. We give them a window, from the person who gives the invocation to the person who makes closing remarks. And just communicating that early and often to them has helped over the years. And we have board members who have attended this event for, some of them for 20 years. And they want to get out of there on time as well. So they help us stick to that. Jacqui, what do you think?
I was going to say that the same thing. I think we do allow a little bit of margin in time because we control what we can control in terms of what our speakers are going to say, the president or the gala chair. And every year on that script, we're cutting words out. If I can cut two more words out on that, because nobody likes the talkie. Nobody is there for the talkie.
That needs to be a hashtag, by the way. Nobody likes the talkie.
Um, I think something else that helps is the walkthrough we do, and we give them well in advance. In January, we start giving anyone who's going to be on stage, and again, the event happens in March, a very tightly timed run of show. And so I think we do really impart that we are serious about the schedule. And during the walkthrough the day of, we're telling them there's 2 minutes here. It's gonna take you 20 seconds to get to the stage. So I think it really does impart to them that we're serious about keeping the timeline.
And you all do such a good job with that. And one thing that I think really sets you all apart with that is you keep a tight timeline, but there is enjoy your dinner for the next 20 or 30 minutes and talk with the other guests. Because usually when people are on a tight timeline, that usually gets lost. And the fact that every single year I can count on having a nice 20 or 30-minute conversation with whomever I'm seated next to is one of the things I really enjoy about your event is that you make time for the guests to actually chat with one another when they're seated so that they're not focused just on the program, but they're also focused on having a good time. And I think it's as Krystle had said, people keep coming back year after year, and there is a devoted following for this organization. So I'd love Krystle's thoughts first and then Jacqui's, but what's the secret to creating a devoted following for a gala or signature fundraising event?
And to piggyback on what you just said, I feel like it's a luxury. Like it's something that helps elevate the event. We bring in live musicians during dinner. There's, soft chatter going on in the room. We have Four Seasons that caters for us every year. So it's a delicious meal, which I think makes a difference. People aren't just hurrying through their rubber chicken. And so to me, I think that's something that kind of sets our event apart. I feel like so many events are rushed now with service, and it's very difficult to serve everybody a hot meal if there's almost 500 people in a room. So I feel like taking that time really helps set the tone of the event and makes it not feel as rushed, even though we are strict on the timeline. I love the question about how we have such a devoted following for this event. And really, I think it comes down to trust. I think our donors trust us. They trust us with their money and their donations year after year because they know we're going to be good stewards of it. They're bought into our mission. But also, we put on an event every year that even though the honoree might not be a household name when you get there that evening, you leave feeling that person's so deserving of being a history-making Texan. I'm glad I got to know more about them and their story, and it doesn't feel like a wasted time. There's nothing worse than when you've gotten a tuxedo and you've made all these plans and you get there and then you're in the car going home and you're like, I didn't really learn anything. I didn't really meet anybody new. I don't want to say like it's a waste of time, but it doesn't feel like it was a good investment of your time. And so I feel like we always try to put on an event that when people leave, they're like, wow, I learned something new. I'm proud to be a Texan. What dynamic history making Texans we have. So I think that has something to do with our devoted following.
Fantastic. And Jacqui, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Well, I really appreciate that our trustees, they all buy tables and they give a lot of thought and effort into who they invite to the event. And it's very strategic. They might have their family there, and that's great. They're cultivating the next generation of philanthropists, but they're being very strategic and consulting with Krystle and I on maybe people from their community that might become donors to the museum. So that's all very intentional and selfless of them to fill their tables with people that they think really can help the museum. And so that all creates a really great experience.
And speaking of great experiences, and Krystle touched upon this earlier, is you've got people from all corners of the state. And you as an organization, Jacqui, have the luxury and the challenge of choosing event chairs in such a
Mhm.
large state, and I think Texas has like 20 media markets. Like, I mean, there's a lot of cities that you can pull from. So share how the organization selects chairs and finding the right co-chair. And speaking of through lines that Krystle was talking about earlier, the event, one of the event through lines is undoubtedly Jan Bullock, but the process of finding the right event co-chair from various markets that also are going to buy with Jan, who is, a co-chair every year.
Crystal, do you want to talk about that?
Oh, yes, of course. So, our honoree selection committee does a wonderful job of making sure every honoree is qualified and, has a story to tell. So we wait until we've confirmed our honorees, and then we look at our board and see what fits. We really want this event to be a special evening for our honorees. So it might be that they're from the same geographic region. It might be that they attended the same university. It might be that they're in the same, career field, so that there would be overlap, because we found that the galas that are the most successful are the ones that have chairs, that there is, some sort of through line, so that when they're thinking of circles of spheres of influence, it's a natural fit to call those people and say, for example, honoring, Charles Butt. It makes sense to have someone from South Texas who might have some of the same friends or serve on the same committees or be in a large Texas corporation. So we try to go out of our way to have the chair that fits the honorees instead of vice versa.
Very, very well said. Jackie, you have anything to add?
Yeah, I would pipe in and I'd say that's probably another advantage for sure of having an event producer, especially like Crystal, is when we ask them to chair the event, they say yes because they know Crystal's in charge of it and it's going to be just run at the highest level and very organized, and they're going to get great support and not last minute requests, that she's going to make it easy for them and they can really do the actual kind of chair level things and not have to worry about the organization of the event. So that's another advantage of having an event producer, is it makes it easier to find a chair.
Oh, fantastic. And, the other thing that is a critical component of the Texas Independence Day dinner is the History Making Texan Award.
Mhm.
And finding honorees that, reflect both the organization, but also reflect Texas more broadly. So I'd love each of you to share and each of you to chime in on, your thoughts on how the organization decides on which history making Texans they're going to honor each year.
Well, I can speak to the process, and we have a board committee, and they compile a list of nominations. The criteria for winning the award is the History Making Texan Award recognizes living Texas legends whose contributions to the state and nation have been truly historic and exceptional in scope and nature. So they create nominations that meet that criteria, and they have some long and lively discussions over those nominations. We do, in generating those nominations, we look at the different, as Crystal said, regions of the state, but we also look at the different sectors. We want to make sure we have the breadth of the way Texas has really changed the world and contributed to the world in terms of public service, the arts, sport, sciences, everything. And so we've had honorees from lots of different sectors. So that's really how they go about choosing the nominees. Usually we have two nominees each year.
And I'll just say that I'm not really involved in the honoree selection committee at all. Like, they come to me and I find out when the rest of the board does who the honorees are going to be typically, because I'm proud to say that the people who are nominated to be history making Texans, it has no bearing on their fundraising ability. It has to do strictly with if they're deserving of the award and if they meet all of these qualifications that Jackie just read. So it's exciting. I get excited when they tell me who the honorees are going to be.
Well, but you serve a very important part, and I see this every single year, is that you have little details throughout the night that serve as nods to the honorees.
I'm
Still one
glad
of
you've
my
noticed that.
I do this every year. Still one of my all-time favorite. I'll remember it like when I'm 90. Gala moments ever was. And a few years ago, Lisa Cooley was a guest on this show, and she was like, "There will be a surprise when you walk in the door." And I'm like, okay. And I see these bronze statues of Roger Staubach, against the backdrop, as she said, of Crystal saying fans trying to crash through the gates, and Admiral McRaven. And I was like, oh, this is cool. And then like the Roger Staubach statue shifted his position. And I'll never forget, I turned to Lance. I was like, oh my God, they're live. And it was like literally like 30 seconds. I don't know if Lisa prompted them, like if two guys in well-dressed in tuxes walk in, move. Like I don't, it was really an unforgettable moment. And those details. And Crystal, from an event producing perspective, that was probably a request. Let's just say that was a truly elevated moment. But talk about how you plan event details around the honorees, whether it's something like that to a favorite dessert of one of the honorees. Talk a little bit about that process.
Yes, and this is something that I inherited when I started coming in. I really think that this shows the dedication of our trustees. When I started helping with the gala, this was something that Debbie Rayner and Julie Oles and Jan Bullock were already doing, trying to go out of their way to make it feel very special for our honorees. So it was really their vision from the beginning. I'm excited that I helped get to continue it. It is fun that when we talk to them in their initial meetings, is we just try to get an idea for them. Like when we were honoring Lyda Hill, we found out that, she has this magnificent private geode collection and she loves the color orange. So we had orange flowers, and from her private collection, we took some of her geodes to put on the tablescape for the head table, which was lovely. When we honored the Dells last year, we asked them if there was anyone special in their life, and we ended up with their rabbi, Daniel Septimus, giving the invocation at the event, which was very touching and meaningful for them. I mentioned Charles Butt earlier, and one of my favorite was we found out that his very favorite dessert is 1905 Creamy Creations vanilla ice cream. So we got to work with the Four Seasons pastry chefs to come up with an ice cream ball, like a bonbon, to serve for dessert, which he loved and was so special to be able to honor not only an HEB product, but also the one that's his favorite in that way in the evening. So thank you for noticing that we try to do that.
And I remember those bonbons, and congratulations to you all. I mean, that's probably the only award I think Charles Butt has ever accepted. And you've had presidents accept awards. So I mean, that just goes to show how well produced this event is. And I'd love for each of you to share, and we can start with Jacqui, just what are some things that guests can expect to experience at the 2026 Texas Independence Day dinner?
Well, we're thrilled to have our two honorees, Jody Conrad, who for over 31 years was the head coach of the women's basketball team, one of the winningest coaches in U.S. history, and a member of the Women's Basketball Hall of Fame. So it's going to be really fun to honor her. I think it's going to be a great video with her. And then I'm especially excited also to be honoring Dr. Ruth Simmons, who has just achieved the highest echelons in academia, both as an administrator. She was president of Smith College and Brown University, as well as her own achievements as a professor. And I've mentioned, it's just staggering to me that in 2023, she was given the highest honor given by the federal government for anybody in achievements in the humanities. And she's just an amazing story. So I think the videos are going to be really great this year.
Those are two great honorees, and I love that it touches various aspects of culture. And I think that's really cool too, is that you're going to kind of have a range. And Crystal, I'd love to hear from an event perspective what guests can expect to experience at this year's dinner.
Absolutely. We're in early days of planning and fundraising, but we've already been thinking, and it's like, how do you appropriately honor these two glass ceiling shattering strong Texas women? I'm excited to take on the challenge. We will have a packed room of Texans from across the state, as we've already discussed. We'll have the Four Seasons back for their 22nd year of catering in the beautiful museum. And we have a very dynamic gala chair, Dia Campos, who has already been brainstorming ways that we can elevate this and give it a little more sizzle and fun this year. So stay tuned. You'll have to come and see what we end up with.
Always Always a good tease there with doing that. And what's so magical about the event, when you walk in every year, you can count on walking up the beautiful stairs in the atrium and
Mm.
having cocktails upstairs. And I think the spatial planning that you all have come up with together is one of the things that makes the evening special, because you are utilizing multiple spaces in the venue, and that's a really important thing, especially if you're hosting it at a place where the event's being honored. So I'm excited for this coming year, and I know we're coming up on time, but I always like to end with kind of a fun question. So Jacqui, I'd like you to go first, and then Krystle, you can have the last word. And that is, what is one thing all successful fundraising events have in common?
I think I'd harken back to something Krystle said earlier, which is knowing what the purpose of the event is. It might be raising money. The purpose of the event might not be raising the most money. It might be friend raising, or honoring volunteers, but really knowing what the purpose of the event is and staying laser focused on that.
Fantastic. And Krystle?
I would say having guests willing to come back next year. That's what it's all about for me, is that someone, when they're leaving, they're saying, I can't wait to be back next year. And I try to keep that in the front of my mind as we plan this event every year.
Getting people to come back and creating that
Yeah.
devoted following is huge, because once you have that, it's like a snowball from the top of a mountain. It just gets bigger and bigger and bigger as you roll it down the hill. And that's a very, very good answer. And you two are complete pros. And I am so glad and so honored I got to chat with the two of you today. You're two of my favorite event people in Texas. So thank you both so much, Jacqui and Krystle, for joining us today.
Thanks for having us, Rob.
Thank
Absolutely.
you. Thank you.
Absolutely. And the Texas Independence Day dinner, benefiting the Texas State History Museum Foundation and the Bob Bullock Texas State History Museum, will be held on March 3rd, 2026 in Austin, Texas. For more information, please visit tshmf.org. And that will do it for this episode of Fun and Fundraising. I'm your host, Rob Giardinelli, reminding you to keep it fun, keep it interesting, and your guests will have a great time. Have a great day, everyone, and take care.